Hey, it's Sam here. Today we're going to be reviewing the Midea Dehumidifier. Technically speaking, it's the Midea 1500 square foot dehumidifier. This thing is packed with features, and we happened to buy it from Sam's Club before the summer heat got started. Because of this, we paid $149.99, where they typically sell for $179.99 or more. They also make 3500 and 4500 square foot models, which respectively cost more. At the time of purchase, I wasn't aware of all the bells and whistles this thing comes with, and after purchasing the Hisense dehumidifier, I've come to realize they all might look similar, but they can be quite different on the inside. Looking at the top panel here, it has a pump button, comfort, filter, continuous, timer, plus and minus buttons, and the power button. At first, I just assembled the unit, turned it on, and didn't really know what the pump was for or how to properly work the filter option. I've definitely got a couple things to say about the features, but first, let's cover all the talking points. It says it comes with a reusable filter, which is basically a fine mesh that needs to be rinsed off every other week. If you have allergies to pets or pollen, this will not help in any way with that. However, it'll catch larger floating particles and prevent them from gunking up your dehumidifier. All dehumidifiers say they're quiet. This unit claims to be ultra quiet with a low dBA output. Most of us don't have any idea what dBA is. I assume if many years ago these units were as loud as a motorcycle or something, then this could be considered quiet, but you'd really have to turn up the TV or music to overcome the sound of this unit. It can sort of run 24/7 as long as you keep emptying the bin. The bin is about 1.6 gallons, so on a super muggy day, I empty it about twice a day. I got 3 of these units, so that's a lot of emptying. There are continuous drain and pump features, which I'll go over in a bit too. It says it's got a modern design. Well, okay, but they all look like white boxes, so I guess they're all modern looking. Easy maintenance does seem right, although if the bin is full, be careful not to spill anything while you're trying to carry it across the room. Otherwise, in the 3 months that we've been operating the dehumidifier, it hasn't had too much to do. I did have to spend quite a bit of time troubleshooting the features, which I'll explain a little bit later. It says it's Energy Star efficient, which judging by the more than 9,400 4.5 star reviews must have some credence to it. I don't have a way to verify it, but I'll go with it. Convenient mobility. Okay, it does have wheels at the bottom, and as long as you have flat ground, you can move it from one side of the room to the other. But if you got to take it upstairs or through a door jamb, like when I had to carry it into the garage, you're going to have to pick it up. It's quite heavy. The handles are okay, but don't try moving it full of water. I know that sounds dumb, but yeah, I did it. And there's nothing that prevents the water from splashing around inside the unit. So it's better to empty the bin and then move it around. Another feature that's touted here is the auto restart. I will say that has come in handy a few times. If power goes out, when the power comes back on, it turns back on. If the unit is full, you just pull the bin out, empty it, and when you slide it back in, it automatically turns back on, resuming whatever setting it was set to. So that's pretty nice. One of the features that caught me by surprise is the Wi-Fi connection to the Midea Air app. From here, you can sync it to your smartphone ecosystem like Google Home or Amazon's Alexa. Pairing wasn't the easiest, but wasn't the worst either. It took a few tries and was a little trickier for the second and third unit that I have, but eventually everything got paired up. I labeled everything properly, and if that had been it, it would have been fine. But over time, the units kept disconnecting, and in some cases, I had to delete the unit from the app and completely start over. Even when it's connected, it turns out there isn't much you can do with it. I guess one time I was laying in bed and I didn't want the unit to overflow, so I just use the app to turn it off. But sometimes when you want that convenience, it's just not paired anymore, and I end up walking across the room to just manually adjust it, which takes 20 extra seconds, so it's not a big deal. Honestly, I gave up on the Wi-Fi connection. I don't even check on it anymore. A lot of the time, it's just unpaired, and I don't have the time to be reconnecting it all the time. By the way, it won't tell you if the unit is full from the app or how full the bin is, so that doesn't help either. To me, the Wi-Fi feature is an afterthought and not worth bothering with. Another issue with the unit is figuring out how continuous drain and pumping works. Okay, my fault for not reading the manual. But in my defense, it seems like the person that translated it was like their third language. Anyway, it turns out the continuous draining is one feature and pumping is yet another way to keep the unit operating without having to empty the tank. Continuous draining requires a standard hose and hooks up at the back of the unit. If you're going to use this feature, plan on putting your dehumidifier on a box or a shelf so the hose will immediately go downward, or the drainage won't work. This is similar to all dehumidifiers, so I wouldn't ding Midea for that, but without knowing it, does get confusing. You also need to run the hose to the drain properly on the floor, or you'll really have to put the dehumidifier really high. I've toyed with the idea of drilling a hole in the wall to allow drainage straight outside the house, but I'm not sure if I'm willing to do that. It would be the size of a hose. That's a pretty big hole. Pumping seemed like a good alternative, but it turns out that feature is quite quirky. If you don't install the tube into the unit, it comes with a tube. And if you don't install it right on the back of the unit, it will leak. It's happened to me twice so far, and there's nothing worse than coming into the room to realize the water hasn't been pumping properly. Instead, it's just been spilling on the floor. Anyway, the pump only reaches about halfway into the bin, so you could only drain about 0.8 of a gallon instead of the 1.6 gallon capacity. It makes a loud humming sound when it's pumping. Honestly, it didn't really seem worth the hassle. I felt like I had to monitor the draining. I didn't want it to bust a spill, and it was faster just to empty the bin because the pumping is quite slow. I've given up on both the continuous drain and the pumping features altogether. The rest of my review here for the dehumidifier is pretty good. There's a comfort mode. It uses a mid-range level to dehumidify to and turns off automatically when it reaches that level. I think it's around 40 to 50 degrees of humidity. It's easy to set and leave it be, so that's good. Turbo runs the fan faster. Of course, that makes the operation louder, but it helps get things going when the humidity is high. Continuous button, I wouldn't recommend unless you have a good hose hookup solution. The timer's easy. You select it and then you use the plus and minus buttons to set how many hours you want it to go for. So that's good. Now the filter button, I couldn't figure out what that was for. It has double duty. If you press it for 3 seconds, it goes into pairing mode. If you're already paired and you push it for 3 seconds, it's kind of hard to get it off pairing mode. I actually couldn't figure out how, so I unplugged it and replugged it back in. Now the actual filter button, what it does is after, I don't know how long, the button turns on and it's just a reminder to remove the filter on the back and rinse it out. Pop it back on, push the filter button, and the light turns off. If you don't need to clean your filter when the light turns on, you just push the button and it turns off. I wish someone had explained it to me. It took me a while to figure it out. My final review, the unit is worth the price. We paid $159, maybe you'd pay $179 or a little bit more. There are other simpler units that do one thing well. That's dehumidify. And that's all I really needed. I wouldn't bother with the Wi-Fi or the hose unit or the pump feature, and I wouldn't expect to be moving this easily all the time. One of the 3 units we bought started vibrating loudly and stopped dehumidifying. That is a downside. But with so many 5-star reviews, I assume we just got a bummed one. We took it back to Sam's Club. They gave us our money back, so that wasn't an issue otherwise. Since I'm emptying the bin twice a day on most days, I can tell it's working really well. I don't use the half-baked features. The basic units work well, and it's hassle-free. So I'd recommend it on that level. I wouldn't blame anyone for searching for another unit with less bells and whistles, if it has a lower price especially. Good luck out there, especially in the middle of summer.